Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
It's 10 days to go to the Ashes. But do you know what the big news of the day is, Simon?
I
The
can't
big
wait.
news of the day is Akash Kumar Chowdhury hitting 8 sixes in a row in a Ranji Trophy match, broken the world record for most sixes in a row in a first-class match. Amazing. 50 off 11 balls for Meghalaya against Arunachal Pradesh in the Ranji Trophy plate competition. What do you make of it?
Surely you've had 8 sixes in a row hit off your bowling. I mean, you must have done. You must have had 8 or 9. I
Not
can't believe.
even when I was 10 years retired and I bowled at Kevin Peterson in a challenge, a competition at my local club, which I've talked about a bit before during the 2005 Ashes. And he came down to my local club, Ealing, and I said to him, "Come on then, see if you can hit 30 off and over." And he only managed about 12. So,
Never lose it,
no,
Yoz.
not even. I don't think I've even been hit for 2 sixes in a row, actually, except in sort of when I'm playing against my old school or something.
Listen.
Yeah,
Be careful. Be careful making statements like that, because I can go to my friend Andy Zaltzman and say, "Zaltz,
God.
was yours ever hit for 2 consecutive sixes?" And he'll come back within about 5 minutes and say, "Yes, it happened about 47 times."
I think the listeners are bored of this topic. Really, we should talk about. Well, I think that match I refer to, and we'll get on to the Ashes in a minute, of course. But that match I refer to is one of the great defeats in world cricket, isn't it? Because Arunachal Pradesh were bowled out for 73 and 109 after Meghalaya got 628 for 6 declared. So Meghalaya won by an innings and 446. That's pretty good, isn't it? But the greatest defeat of all time dwarfs that in comparison. The Dera Ismail Khan, that famous match in Pakistan in the 1960s, they were bowled out twice to lose by an innings and 851 to Pakistan Railways. And that was the only first-class match they ever played, not surprisingly. And I wonder if that's the same with Arunachal Pradesh, because have you seen any clips of those 8 sixes, by the way?
I haven't. No,
They
I've
are
not.
online, actually, on Cricinfo, and the bowling is pretty ordinary. I would say your slow left arm spin is as good as the guy that got hit for the 6 sixes, actually. Very slow and round arm, sort of his arm was almost sort of parallel to the ground. It was pretty ordinary cricket, actually, but
Well,
very good hitting.
well, as bad as me. I'm surprised I didn't get 12 off each ball. Right.
So, anyway,
That
quite an
size of
interesting
defeat,
story.
yours,
Yes,
that
go on.
size of defeat reminds me of England in New Zealand, in Hamilton, the last time they played a Test match there. I think they lost by over 400 runs. Ian Smith referred to it. So, what are we going to get when this series gets underway in 10 days' time? I'm really excited. I think there's got to be quite. It just feels. The closer you get to the Ashes, you kind of like work out what do you feel about it? What's your sort of sense about it? And I think the closer I've got to it, more sense of realism of how difficult this is going to be for England. And I think the Betfair odds suggest that, don't they? Australia are 63% to win the Ashes, 60% to win the first Test match, and you can see that first Test match in 10 days' time on TNT Sports. I'll be there for a Test match special. You can watch, you can listen. There's so many ways of accessing it, and then you can be with us at the end of the day's play where we'll round it up and give our views on each day's play in the Ashes on the Analyst podcast.
Which actually, of course, is a nice time of day to watch us, by the way. It's midday or sort of even 1 o'clock in the afternoon, English time, with the Perth Test match. Of course, they're only 8 hours ahead. So there'll be a nice time of day to be able to actually watch the last session or two of play on TNT Sports. They are supporting this podcast, and you can get to the TNT Sports channels if you go to either EE, Virgin or Sky. And you can log on to the TNT Sports channels there, or you can find them also at Discovery Plus. You do need to get a subscription for that, and you have to be over 18. Of course, terms and conditions apply. And thank you to TNT for supporting us with this. And of course, they will be doing their own live and then highlight show. We'll be coming on at around lunchtime, English time, to give you a feedback on the day's play from the Optus Stadium in Perth. Maybe we should just listen to a Australian journalist, a guy that we probably both interacted with a fair bit, who always has some trenchant thoughts about the Ashes, usually with an Australian bias, Robert Crash Craddock, who is the cricket correspondent of the Courier Mail in Brisbane. And let's just hear a little bit of what he thinks about England's preparations, particularly about the formation or not formation of England's bowling attack. So this is Crash Craddock on the podcast codesports.au.
Who is England's opening attack with the ball? Like who are they? I mean, Mark Wood's played 2 games this year. Jofra Archer's fragile. Like, it can't work, that sort of snatching at a new ball attack. And I'm not sure who we got. And, like, I thought Ian Healy was terrific the other day when he looked at the way India played at Optus Stadium, that one-day game, and said, hey, England, you're coming for one warm-up game. Get ready. This is what you're facing, the shock of Optus Stadium. And I'll tell you, teams that have come to Australia and beaten them over the years have normally had a bit of preparation. You know, they've normally had that acclimatisation. And to just, I see trouble for England early, I really do. And as I said, it's just too flaky, the whole attack. Oh, we'll find a new ball attack. Really? Who?
Thank you, Crash, for that. Typically forthright comments, very biased, of course. What do you think?
Well, you say biased, but I mean he's got a point, hasn't he? Who is England's new ball attack going to be? Look, they've had question marks over their pace bowlers all summer, and the problem last summer is they were fit at different points, and no one was kind of like fit together. Look, there is some quality in that England attack. There is some pace in that England attack. If they can get them all fit at the same time, then it could cause a problem for Australia. That Mark Wood hasn't played for a long time, says he doesn't need a lot of match preparation. Jofra Archer has been playing, of course, and they've managed him. And Jofra Archer bowled well at times in New Zealand, and he bowled very well last summer. So you know, I don't think you can kind of totally disparage what Jofra Archer can come up with in Perth. But is he going to be able to play all the matches? You've got Josh Tongue, you've got Ben Stokes. Well, Ben Stokes hasn't bowled for months and months in a game of cricket. So you've actually got question marks over 2 of England's attack. That is Stokes, one of them, and Mark Wood. And then there's Gus Atkinson, who came back at the end of the English summer and started bowling again and played some county cricket as well. He hasn't bowled a lot, but I mean, he is steadying influence on that attack. Yeah, Tongue, and then there's Bryden Cast, who of course has been bowling in New Zealand. So I mean, there are lots of options, and what will be interesting is what configuration of attack England will put out. Who is going to be their new ball attack, and how many are they going to play? I mean, are they going to play Stokes plus 4 pace bowlers, so a 5-man pace attack specifically for that ground? It's fascinating. Australia have got some work to do as well in trying to configure their team and their pace attack. So it's great, isn't it? I mean, we don't quite know what either team is going to come up with in 10 days' time with their team.
No, that's right. Well, we'll come on to Australia and their preparations and the players that have been chosen for their squad in a bit. I suppose there was a reference there from Crash Craddock to India's performance in the Optus Stadium for the first one-day international recently. Bowled out for 136 in 26 overs. So they didn't even bat much more than half their overs in the match. Australia knocked off the runs for the loss of 3 wickets. So it was a fairly humbling defeat for India in that first match, which they didn't prepare all that much for. And, the likes of Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli and so on playing. I walked into Virat Kohli last week, bizarrely, in West London, in close to where he's now living a lot of his life, actually, with him and his wife and young child. Just completely out of the blue, walked into him. I said, "Are you enjoying it?" He said, "Yeah, loving it, living in London." So there you are. But he's obviously back. He didn't play in the T20 matches after those ODIs, England, Australia against India. So, it does make you wonder and worry slightly about England's lack of preparation. We've talked about it a fair few times. They've got this one match starting on Thursday against the Lions at Lilac Hill, haven't they? And they've been warming up already, practicing there. I noticed, just to add to the sort of torrent of sort of sledging going on from the press, from the Australian press, I noticed Malcolm Conn, a famous author and journalist from Australia, who's always got some kind of outrageous comment. He's put today, I see that Marcus Trescothick's being put up for interview tomorrow at Lilac Hill. And I wonder if anyone's going to ask him about something he admitted in his book, that he cheated by chewing Murray mints and applying sugar to the ball to help it swing. I wonder if anyone's going to come up with that. I mean, that really is scraping the bottom of the barrel for some kind of anti-Pommy writing theme, isn't it?
Look, the con man, as he's called, will always go down that route, and I quite look forward to his tweets actually every day, because they are pretty extreme. So a few of our listeners will know Malcolm Conn and probably follow him on Twitter. But it's kind of like part of the build up, isn't it? And the Western Australian newspaper has been at it again, a bit like the Brisbane Courier Mail. What was the quote about Ben Stokes? England's cocky captain complainer arrives. Dopey Bazball was another part of their front page ensemble.
They love to depict us as whinging Poms, don't they? Stokes and co were moaning about the Indian batters being allowed to carry on to score 100 at Old Trafford after the game was obviously a draw. They were raking that up again and moaning English and all that kind of thing. And the headline on the West Australian, I used to write for the West Australian actually many, many years ago, and I played cricket in Perth and in Western Australia. I got a job as their journo to do some sort of silly reportage, and it's very tabloidy. And the headline in the West Australian was Baz Ball, Bawl, wasn't it? As in, crybaby Stokes kind of thing.
Their standards have obviously gone up since you worked for the Mills back in the day.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all part of it. In some ways, it's a bit puerile, it's infantile. Sometimes it's not particularly edifying, but it wouldn't be an Ashes series without it. So you kind of have to go with it. I mean, I think the England players found it quite amusing, didn't they? The depiction of Ben Stokes, the cocky captain complainer. And look, we've been over that ground before. And I'll just toss one thing in. Can you imagine many of the Australian players putting up with what India did at Old Trafford? They wouldn't, would they? They'd have been in their ear holes as well, saying, "Oh, you're just batting for yourself. This is pathetic." All that sort of stuff, which any kind of like self-respecting Test cricketer, first-class cricketer would have done. They wouldn't have just sat back and said, "Oh yeah, here's your 100. Yeah, we'll just we're very happy to continue." Because they wouldn't. And I suspect actually if England done that to India would have been in their ear as well. It's just kind of like the way top-level professional cricket is played. So you've got to take it with a pinch of salt. You've got to expect it, and you've got to be able to deal with it, because if you don't deal with it, if you don't deal with that sort of constant onslaught, then you're going to disintegrate. I think what's interesting, actually, a lot of players, ex-players, have their say, and they're all part of it as well. What's your opinion? And some will say something outrageous. The press, of course, will do that, and the English press presumably will be back as well. English media will be back as well, and English ex-players will be saying their piece. What I think is actually interesting is the Australians themselves, the players, generally don't say a lot, do they? You think of Australian players coming out with strong statements, but actually under Pat Cummins, I don't think that's really happens that much. The odd barb here and there, but it seems as well on the field. We translate that to actually playing in the game. They're not a team of, they're not that archetypal sort of sledging Australian team. That hard-nosed team. Well, they're probably quite hard-nosed, but not in terms of the comments they make on the field. I think Cummins sort of doesn't really have much truck with that, and I think that's something I've noticed in previous series when he's been in charge. It's not just let your cricket do the talking, which is something I actually quite like. If you're a quality cricketer, go out there and play and just do your thing with the battle ball and say, well, that's the statement. Have a look, go and have a look in the paper tomorrow, see what the result is. Go and have a look at my bowling figures. Go and have a look what it says in next to my batting column. 150 or 5 for 60 or whatever, and we won by 8 wickets. That. Do you need any more than that? I also said, would it make? Right. Would it make any difference if cricket was played? If cricket was played in silence, would it make any difference?
No, it wouldn't. And I mean, what is often said is that sledging's pointless because, from a bowler anyway, because you've got to go back and bowl the next one. So whatever you say, it doesn't really make any difference. You've got to go and deliver. And Cummins is the sort of intelligent face of fast bowling, isn't he? And in a way, I think fast bowlers have always been portrayed as sort of, thick. But actually, there's a lot of brains in bowlers. Maybe not in my case, but in a lot of cases, they are quite smart people. And funnily enough, I posted a clip of Ian Botham talking the other day, and you can get that on the Substack blog, the Crick Burst. Our last episode of Great Ashes Test Matches is Botham talking about 1981, and he talks about meeting Bob Willis for the first time and how passionate he was, but also how intelligent he was, how bright he was about the game. And he said, he knows more about cricket than the entire ECB put together. He says at one point in the clip. But Cummins is another level again. I think someone who's got lots of incredible integrity, and he's a very dignified person. But he doesn't say a lot, does he? But he doesn't really need to. He does let his bowling do the talking. I mean, he's occasionally he comes out with the odd right comment. There was there was one site recently that asked all the Aussie players, "Is there any English player you'd like in your side?" And Cummins just smiles and goes, "No." And others kind of go, "Well, I wouldn't mind a Joe Root or a Ben Stokes or something," but Cummins is just, "No, not really." And he's very sort of matter of fact like that.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that though is it's not particularly upping the ante, is it? He's not coming out with an outrageous statement. You're put on the spot like that. I don't know. Perhaps they were told in advance the type of questions they were going to be asked. And you're right. Some of his colleagues were quite charitable. But if you say, oh yeah, I'd love to have Jofra Archer, then it kind of like it gets played up, doesn't it? If you just dead bat it, then it goes away. And I sense that's kind of the game that Australia prefer to play under Cummins. I mean, I can't really think of any particular statement that's come out so far where a player has really kind of put their head above the parapet and said something. Perhaps it will happen. I mean, there'll be plenty of people, the media, us. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions at press conferences and radio and TV interviews leading into the game where people will be invited to say something, because England have been told to be sensible, haven't they, by Rob Key? He said be careful and be sensible in the statements that you make. So it may be from the players quite a sort of quiet build up, but inevitably there's a lot of noise around the game and everyone having their tuppenny halfpenny worth. I mean, what about Australia named their squad, Yoz? We haven't been on since they named their squad. Only one player in it under the age of 30, but these days, is experience, that sort of tough experience, actually what you need. It's interesting. Well, actually, when the series is over and Australia move on, how you feel their team is going to have to regenerate itself quite significantly, because it's not going to go on forever. But for this series, there's still plenty of quality in that Australian squad lineup, whatever the 11 they put out. I mean, it's going to be a big test for England.
Well, it just shows that if you manage players well, as England did with Broad and Anderson, you can carry on for quite a long time. And a few of them have been playing this last round of games, haven't they? And the batters have been playing a few more games, but Stark and Hazelwood turned up for the one-day series against India, and they've bowled a few overs in the Shield, haven't they? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big difference actually between being early 30s and late 30s. By late 30s, you do definitely go on the wane as a bowler. But I think early to mid 30s, not so much.
Yeah.
So one person actually put recently, if you put David Gower and Ian Botham into the England side with their current ages, England's side would still have a lower average age than the current Australian side or squad, because so many of them are over 30. Well, Ian Botham actually is 70 during the first test in Perth, isn't he? On the 24th of November, he's 70. So we're going to do a special sort of look back at Ian Botham's life, an archive film, an interview that I did with him a couple of years ago. We'll play that during that test match to celebrate his 70th birthday, 70th year on this planet. Well, can Stokes do a Botham? Can he sort of bring England back from the dead, as, of course, Ian did so many times in the Ashes? Well, who knows? But he's got the ability, hasn't he? If he gets the bit between his teeth with bat or ball, he can do a Botham.
Well, first thing is he fit? isn't it? That's the key issue. How many overs is he going to be able to bowl? And do England have to manage him in that first Test match? One thing that struck me, actually, I've been thinking about the selection of Will Jacks in this England side. I wonder if one of the reasons Jacks was selected, there are two or three reasons, but one of them might be that if Stokes is not able to play in one or two of the Test matches, that he fits in at 6 or 7, and Smith could go up to 6, and gives England a bowling option, and it still means they can play 4 pace bowlers, and they've got Jacks to spin. So they're kind of the Jacks selection is covering a few bases as well. It's also, do you want to play the extra batter in one game and leave out Shoaib Bashir and still play 4 pace bowlers? That's another way. But I wonder whether it's kind of like a cover for Stokes. You've got a proper batter in that 6-7 area. I mean, is Stokes going to be able to get through all 5 Test matches? Is he going to be able to bowl in all 5 Test matches? I think that's probably what Crash Craddock was talking about in a way. There are question marks over this England attack in terms of fitness, and we know the Cummins situation. Who knows with Cummins? I mean, they seem to be targeting second, third Test, obviously at the first. I mean, he might not bowl a ball in the next series, or you might bowl a few balls and then break down. But England have got those question marks over their bowling attack as well. And of course they've got the familiar ones over their batting lineup. How are they going to play? What's their game strategy going to be? Are they going to sit in? Are they going to try to wear down Australia's bowling attack, or are they just is it going to be charge?
Well, one thing's for sure, I think Australia are going to miss Cummins's batting as much as his bowling, or nearly as much as his bowling, because he does give them that bit of ballast at number 8 or 9. And he's obviously hit, the winning runs in a couple of Test matches. That key Test match at Edgbaston in 2023, for instance, played a key role there with the bat. And his captaincy as well is a sort of very stabilising influence as well. But I think his batting is really important. And without him, Australia could have quite a long tail. And just relating to that, somebody who had a big influence on a couple of Ashes Test matches in past years was a similar sort of cricketer to Pat Cummins in the sort of all-round sense, Ashley Giles, who played a key role with the bat in 2 Test matches in that brilliant 2005 Ashes series. He won the 4th Test at Trent Bridge when he hit the winning runs off Shane Warne, and then he also contributed a crucial 50 in the 5th Test at the Oval with Kevin Peterson to sort of take the game away from Australia. And I mention Ashley Giles just because he's our guest in the World's Best Cricket Club this Wednesday to look ahead to the Ashes and to reflect on his own career. We'd love you to join us. You can ask a question. You can be part of the conversation on the World's Best Cricket Club. If you go to worldsbestcc.com and sign up, it's a site and a club in looking to raise money for the Professional Cricketers Trust, the charity arm of the PCA. So it's a worthwhile cause. Ashley Giles, our guest, 8 p.m. Wednesday night, worldsbestcc.com. And relating to that 2005 Ashes, one other little thing to mark your card with is we're releasing this week our special video series on that 2005 Ashes, which Simon and I have put together over the last couple of months. You'll have heard clips of that series, but you won't have heard the whole thing or seen the whole thing. An episode each day profiling or, re-dramatising those fantastic epic Test matches from 2005. The first 2 episodes will be out today, a sort of introductory episode, and the first Test at Lord's. And here's just a clip of that first Test video from Lord's. It's Justin Langer reflecting on that dynamic, gut-busting, rib-tickling, throat-seeking first session of the play at Lord's that first morning in 2005. Okay. So before the break, that was Justin Langer talking and reflecting on that also painful memory of actually that first session of play in that 2005 Ashes at Lord's. And it was like 2 bull elephants meeting head on, wasn't it, in that the clash of titans in that first Test, which of course England lost. But we kind of have a look at the whole kind of impact of that first test and then move on to other test matches. So those podcasts will be on this site and also on YouTube as well on the Analyst channel. You can find those. They'll be uploaded daily during this week. So look out for those, the 2005 Ashes. We call it the greatest series, and, it certainly was the greatest Ashes. Anyway, let's hope this one coming up will be as good or even half as good.
Yeah, hopefully it'll whet your appetite for what's coming next week, and then hopefully the players can deliver something similar. I would be a bit too much to expect it's going to be the same, but approaching that kind of level of competition, I think that's the point, isn't it? Really, that England have got to go to Australia and compete, because the last three series they've been annihilated, and even one of the games they drew, they were 9 down as well. So I mean, there's only one match they've even threatened, I think, really threatened to win in the last three series in Australia. I had a chance of winning, and that was that game in Melbourne where Alistair Cook made a big double hundreding and took a big lead, but then Australia actually batted out quite comfortably in their second innings. The pitch was extremely flat. It was actually pretty poor surface. So that's the only game in which they had some significant control in the match in the last 15 test matches in Australia. So something's got to change to justify the hype. I think justify the money that people are spending to go out there and play, to go out there and watch as well. A lot of people going from this country to go and watch the series. Okay, it is the cricket, but it's also the experience of getting away from the winter as well. So there's that. But, you want the cricket to be compelling. And I wonder, actually, deep down, whether the Australians do as well, the Australian public. They want a contest. And
well, the administrators do, don't they?
Well, yeah, you'd hope so. I mean, the series needs it in Australia. The series in England have been really competitive. They've been great. And look, Australia haven't won in England since 2001, but every series has been competitive and watchable. So, and that's what England. I think, to me, that's England's main challenge, to go to Australia and do that. Just a bit more about Australia's team, Roger. You mentioned before the break that no Cummins at 8, just a lack of a bit of lower order depth. Michael Vaughan has been suggesting, and we'll see how they go, that there is an option for Australia. I mentioned potentially no Bashir for England at Perth. There's an option for Australia to leave out Nathan Lyon as well, possibly. I'm not saying they will, but so you could have a situation where Green bats at 6 and Bo Webster bats at 8. In the absence of Pat Cummins, which allows them to give a first test to Weatherall, play Labuschagne at 3. Because they've got a problem. The fundamental problem on their side is kind of like Green's ability to bowl. He's going to bowl 15 to 20 overs in the state game between WA and Queensland, which has been played at the WACA in the next few days. So that's something to look out for. Does he come through that? But the problem they've got is if he can't bowl, then they need to kind of find options elsewhere. It means the side's a bit unbalanced. So and therefore, if he can't bowl, does he then have to bat at 3 and Webster at 6? And so it's that's the problem. But I mean, they could solve it by saying Green bats at 6 and Webster bats at 8. So that's another option for them. What about Jake Weatherall then? Potential debut at the age of 31. It's quite old, isn't it, to make your Test match debut? But
Mike Hussey did, didn't he, around that time?
Yeah, he was older. Yeah. But that was because, it seemed to me, there was so much competition back then.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, he was a very good player. You think, well, you would have thought Weatherall would have come through, but then he's been in good form recently. So that's, he's put his head up, and that weight of runs has got the nod from the selectors. But, it is so weird to see an Australian side so relatively old, isn't it? Every single member of the squad in their 30s. You were talking about the pace bowlers, between the ages, early 30s to mid 30s is fine. Well, Stark's 35, Boland is 36, Abbott's 33, Doggett's 31, just taking 5 wickets in a Shield game. Had a good start to the season. Hazel was 34, Cummins is 32. So, and then Lyon. He's well into his 30s as well. But it's slightly different for a spinner. So there's a lot of miles and legs of those pace bowlers, and that was Ian Smith's point on the podcast last week: is can England keep them out there? Generally that's not their approach, is it? Their approach is to go hard, score quickly, put the pressure back on, and you end up going back into the field again, I don't know, after 80 overs or something like that. It's not that 120 overs, 130 overs, which can be so punishing for an aging bowling side. So, so England's approach is going to be interesting as well.
Yeah, and I think that, they should heed deep. Des Gupta on our show last week made a good point that the Kookaburra ball doesn't do as much after, say, 25, 30 overs, even the new version of the Kookaburra. And that someone like Travis Head, if Travis Head comes in the first 20 overs, he usually fails, gets out against the newish ball. But if he comes in after 30 overs, he normally gets 100. That's what Deep reckons. And I think the same has to be true for England. They have to apply themselves in that first 25 overs because that's the time when the ball moves around. I read a blog, actually, also on Substack the other day, by a young blogger who had worked out with using various average strike rate, economy rate, etc., that the Australian bowling attack is by far the most accurate bowling attack in the world at the moment, way ahead of anyone else. And you don't get as many loose balls. Therefore, to try and score at 4.5 and over, you are taking more risks against the likes of Hazelwood, Boland, etc. Stark gives you a few more hittable balls, but he does move the ball quite significantly as well. So, yeah, England have to heed that. And of course, Joe Root will be thinking about this and how he's going to play. You made the point earlier. I think that there's a sequence of Joe Root, all his dismissals in Australia posted online. I think you use the phrase social media sledging. It's sort of video sledging, I suppose, or visual sledging. A sequence of Joe Root's dismissals in Australia, about 15 of them caught behind, just blocking, looking to play, good length ball, little bit of movement, Hazelwood, Boland, Cummins, and either LBW or caught behind was the dominant dismissal form.
Did you know, Yoz, that Joe Root hasn't made a Test 100 in Australia?
Nah.
Did you know that?
Did you know that
fact?
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean,
his average is okay, actually, isn't it? Fact,
it's not too bad. He's averaging sort of close on 36. If you round it up, 35.68 in 14 Test matches. He's been dismissed 25 times, 9 half centuries. I think one of the best he's played in Australia was the Sydney Test match of 2018 when he made 83 in the first innings and then 58 not out in the second innings. And I say not out, actually, he was retired ill. That's when they put him on a drip because he was struggling from food poisoning. He actually batted beautifully. So yeah, he has done it at times. His fourth innings in Australia, he made 87 in Adelaide back in 2013, and his highest score was in December 2021, the last Ashes series, the first test of the last Ashes series. He made 89. He put on a big stand with David Milan, and England were at one stage 220 for 2 in their second innings, and they just got knocked over on the fourth day. So I mean, he has done it. I think the West Australians described his performances in Australia as average, a hero in the homeland, and a pretender in Australia. I'm not the most savage criticism. I mean, it's kind of, I'm not exactly a pretender, but yeah, he hasn't quite done it. His record is not too bad, and he'll be thinking about that sort of first innings in 10 or 11 days' time. And even a player of that ability and with his record as well, he's bound to feel some of that Ashes pressure. But look, he's been in wonderful form, hasn't he, of late? And people say, a hero in the homeland, but actually, he's scored runs in lots
India.
of other countries as well, India, for example. Yeah, so look, it's not about he only gets runs in India. That's absolutely not true. And he has scored runs in Australia, but just not the volume, perhaps, that a player of that ability, you'd expect him to score.
Do you think this build-up is bigger than ever? And I say that because I suppose there are more podcasts and more other outlets, platforms, people on their soapboxes than perhaps there's ever been before an Ashes series. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think it's just more podcasts than ever. We're all feeding off each other, aren't we? Everyone's listening to everyone else's podcasts and picking up the things that they say. Yeah, I think so. And going back to the point I made earlier, that for that reason, we almost don't need the players, do we? The players can just play the cricket, We can do what we're paid to do, which is, do the talking and
pontificate.
And build it. And yeah. What would be your biggest Ashes sledge then? About Australia yards. What would you say?
I'd just say
do get-
I'd fancy bowling at their top two. If I was England bowler, any bowler, I'd fancy getting both of their openers out. Khawaja hasn't got a front leg. Just plays back to everything, plays back to half volleys, so don't give him anything short. And Weatherall is making his Test debut age 31. He can't be that good because it's taken him that long to get in the side, and only when they haven't got anybody else. So I'd be thinking, great, I just need to bowl a good line and length fullish, and I'll get both of them out. 0 for 2. Thanks very much.
So 0 for 2 before you start. There we go. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
But, I think we should draw a close there because, in fact, one of our listeners said to me the other day, I love your podcast, but please keep them to about 35 minutes. We're on about 36 minutes here, so maybe for Alistair's sake, if no one else, perhaps we'll say goodbye.
Okay, well, let's do that. But plenty to look forward to. We've got our Ashes 2005 podcast being released over the next few days. We'll be there in Perth for a daily podcast when the Ashes gets underway. And don't forget the World's Best Cricket Club on Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock, where Ashley Giles will be joining us. Of course, Ashley was the managing director of English cricket for the last Ashes series. The COVID series, the one that didn't matter, was
according to Stuart Broad, anyway. According to Stuart Broad. And that's worldsbestcc.com is where you can find the link to that in support of the Professional Cricketers Trust. And our 2005 Ashes series will be on YouTube, on the Analyst channel, and also on our podcast site as well, the 2005 Ashes Epic Series. And we'll be back on Wednesday after our Q&A about the Ashes with Ashley Giles. So speak to you then.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye for now.